Hey everyone. All right, welcome to another edition of our Author Pep Talks. My name is Bekah Brinkmeier and I'm one of our author coaches here at AutoCrit. It's so good to be here and to kind of get into our topic today, which is the concept of wasted words. As we're in the middle of editing month here for Novel 90, I want to see in the chat how many people had really big feelings about slashing some of their words. Who gets anxious about that? Who thinks that when you have to cut words, that those words are then a waste? It's a pretty common thought, so don't worry about it if you are. This is not a trick question. I do want to start this session, though, with a truth. You know, I like to do that. And I hope that you really kind of let it sink in. You already know what I'm going to say because it's on the screen, but there's no such thing as wasted words. Okay, let's talk about what that means because sometimes if you've looked at a deleted scene or maybe your unfinished draft that you know is not going to go anywhere, do you ever get that like knot in your stomach and you're like, oh no, I've wasted so much time. If only I had known what I know now, I wouldn't have made those choices. I wouldn't have written this character this way. You know what? We can't go back in time. You didn't waste your time. And yeah, maybe it would have been faster to know that you wanted to write in third person instead of first, but you still wrote. You got there. I will tell you right now that I have made some pretty colossal rewrites in my career. One of my ones that I love to hate was the time when literally at 75%, I had been writing in third and it was like pulling teeth. And then I decided to do a writing exercise where I switched the POV and I switched to a dual POV first person present from third. And then all of a sudden, the last quarter of the book, it just flowed. I was getting thousands of words per day. But do you know what that means? That means the first 75% I had to rewrite not just out of third and into first present, but to split it up into dual POV. Now, I will ask you this, and you can tell me in the comments, what would you do in that situation? Because I was mad about it. I was on a deadline, rewriting to a different tense into a different dual POV from single. That's not like correct a few paragraphs. That is a full rewrite. But I never once was like, these words are a waste. I was more irritated with myself for not paying attention to what I'd wanted to do in the first place. So, this little session is for anyone who's cut chapters, who's scrapped projects, who's wondered why they even bother with their editing process. I want you to know you're not alone in feeling this way, and I promise you didn't waste your time. So, I already asked you this, but I want you to put it in the comments and answer it for real. Does the idea of slashing words make you personally anxious? So maybe this sounds familiar. You wrote 20,000 words and you had to toss 8,000 of them. They just didn't make the final cut. You shelved a novel halfway through. Has anyone else done that? My shelved pile is rather extensive. You've spent weeks chasing a subplot that turned out to go nowhere, and now you're staring at the blinking cursor, wondering what on earth was the point, and why you did that, and what you're supposed to do now. Yeah, been there. So here's my point though. Those are all choices, they're creative choices that we've made. They are all part of the writing process, but it's not a waste of words. Even when a story doesn't work out the way you wanted it to, it still teaches you. And that effort is absolutely never erased. It's part of your growth as an artist, it's part of your process, and the words themselves, they still count. So, let's reframe too when you think about the concept that every word you write counts. I am not going to say to you that every word you write should be used. Probably should not. Some of us, myself included, are wordy people. I um, use too many words. Sometimes I need to use less. But every word that I write in my story does count towards my creative goal. Sometimes that creative goal goes in a different direction and those words no longer meet that goal. So the ones that I don't use, they still have value. They're just not meeting that goal. So they need to go somewhere else. Those deleted scenes that we have, I like to save mine and use them as bonus material. But when you delete a scene, was creating that scene in the first place a waste, or did it help you find your character's true voice? Was it a complete waste of time, or did it help you figure out something in the plot? Um, Speaking of that plot, maybe your subplot that you had going with your sidekick character. I love to give my sidekick characters weird subplots. Maybe you cut that at the last minute because you realized it was distracting from the main plot. Did the act of writing that, was that a waste? Or did it kind of clarify the kind of story that you didn't want to write? Because that knowledge is helpful. That knowledge is powerful. So even if those words don't make it to the final draft, they shaped the writer you're becoming, and that is never wasted. All right. When you slash words out of your manuscript, does that mean they're gone forever? Hopefully not. If unless they're, one word offs. Hopefully if you're taking whole scenes out, that you're not deleting them. And if you are, I'd like to propose a new habit for you that can help you look at this process in a different way. I want you to create a slush pile or a cutscene vault or a slash yard. I don't care what you call it, but I want your scenes that if you're going to do a whole delete of like a whole scene or a whole section, I don't want you to delete it permanently. I want you to copy that and cut and paste and put it into. Whew, that snuck up on me. I want you to put it into a backup document. I call mine a slush pile. Some people refer to it as their vault. I want you to copy it and paste it in there. If you really want to, you can organize it by type of scene or point of view or whatever. It doesn't really matter. Whatever works makes sense for you. But here's why I want you to do that, because you will reuse more of that more often than you expect. It also gives you kind of an emotional boost when you are sad about cutting everything out of your book. So it softens the emotional sting. You're going to use it in some manner or speaking, but it also helpfully gives you a record of how much you've written, which is often a lot more than you realize. So if I have a 60,000 word novel and I realize that I hate this subplot thing with my sidekick character, I need to cut all of that out. So I painstakingly go through chapter by chapter, identify those scenes, copy them, cut them out, put them in my slush pile, but then rewrite the interaction so that it goes in the new direction. I might think that that's just tedious and that it wasn't that much work until I go back and look at my slush pile and realize that I've got like 7 pages worth of dialogue and maybe, I don't know, let's say 7,000 words that I just took out to take this subplot out. Well, I still wrote those words and I'm going to use them, dang it. I just might not use it in the way I expected. So, as I like to talk about my ADHD on here, and so I will say, as a neurodivergent writer, that kind of visual tracking to all my other neurospicy friends, that kind of decision tracking of having your slush pile up and copying it, cutting it, and pasting it into that, it actually can help reduce your decision fatigue. And it helps you build a sense of safety around your work because you're not losing it, you're just setting it aside. That kind of mindset shift, it can be really helpful, especially if you're really reluctant to cut things out, even if it has been suggested that you should. Does that make sense? Okay. Seriously though, you need a slush pile. Because we're going to bring it to reduce, reuse, recycle, right? Don't be afraid to revisit these old files. There's gold in there. Even I've reused my slush pile from one book to a different book outside of that series or inside that series. The story that you shelved, that oh, I need more water. That story you shelved, it still holds treasures. You can recycle, you can snippets of dialogue, unique settings, emotional beats, character dynamics, world building details. I had a whole thing where I described this cityscape, and then I decided I didn't like it, so I cut it out. But in a different book, like 2 years later, I was trying to describe a cityscape again, and I remembered, so I dug through my slush pile, which is really more like a whole Google Drive sections of folders, and found it, copied it, pasted it into my new document, adjusted it a little bit for tone. Done. Those words, I wrote them several years ago. They still count. They still matter. They were not wasted. They were just not needed for the original project. You can, I like to garden, so you could think of it as composting, perhaps. Nothing goes to waste. It just transforms into something new. I will put a caveat on here. Every time you cut out like a sentence, if it's just one sentence at a time, if you really like that sentence, copy it over. If it's just filler sentence, you don't have to. I usually wait till I'm cutting out like a block of dialogue or a block of world building, or if I cut a whole character, they go in a separate folder because I built that character out. I often have a character sheet about them. I'm going to use that character or that character's avatar in some manner of speaking someday. So I will separate that out as its own thing. Because again, I already wrote it. I put my blood, sweat, and tears into this. I was probably sleep deprived. I'm going to use it. It's good. So, what happens when a project doesn't work out? What happens when you're like, this book is not booking? This book is halfway done. I hate it. I think other people will hate it. It's not flowing. My muse has absolutely run away to take a cruise. What the heck do I do with this chunk of 30,000 nonsensical words? Conduct the postmortem. Seriously. You're not just writing, you're learning how to write better, and sometimes projects don't work out, and that's okay. When this happens, after I get mad at it, because that is part of my process, I get mad at it and I like aggressively close all the tabs. I'll have to give myself a little bit of time to either mourn or get my head on straight. And then before I move it to my non-active folder, I sit down and I ask myself, what happened? Where did it break down? Was it that I just didn't ever connect with my characters and I have character-driven plots, and so it just wasn't selling it? Was there something externally going on that with the subject matter, perhaps, that I was like, I can't, I'm just not in the right headspace to write it? Was it the pacing? Sometimes the pacing can be so haphazard that it's really hard to find your flow. Were the stakes unclear? Did I completely lose control of the story by chance? I don't know. But I want you to conduct the postmortem, and I want you to write down what you try differently next time. And I like to do this in an inline comment in the document or with suggestion mode if you're writing in Google Docs or Microsoft Word. But if you're an AutoCrit, I'll actually leave a bookmark and attach it to a note. And I'm going to write down what I would do differently if I were to go back to it. Maybe it's I would develop a better love interest because this one's not selling it. Maybe I would set it in a different, maybe I'd move it from contemporary to paranormal. Maybe what it needed was a werewolf. You'd be surprised how often that happens. Sometimes you just need a werewolf. This will turn that quote unquote failure into data. And that helps you build emotional resilience towards your own work, but it also helps us analyze what we're doing, how we are improving. If you're worried that this is not something that you should be doing, or that it's, I don't know, something frustrating and only beginners do it, you need to remember that Stephen King once threw Carrie in the trash. His wife rescued it, transformed his career, but he threw it in the trash. He threw it away. So understand that you're learning how to write better, and go ahead and conduct the postmortem. It's a necessary part of the process. Rewriting, cutting, and starting over are not failures. Think of them as steps forward. I did some research and found some more quotes from pros about the concept of rewriting, cutting, and starting over. Ernest Hemingway, we all know Hemingway, 39 endings for a failure to arms. He wrote the ending, let me repeat that, to A Farewell to Arms 39 times before he felt he got the words right. And those rewrites weren't just tweaks, they were radically different approaches to tone and resolution. 39. Yeah. Toni Morrison's Beloved took years of intense revision. Toni Morrison rewrote entire sections of it, especially when grappling with its nonlinear structure. It's a challenging book. She once described the process as writing and then rewriting everything to find the real book beneath the sentences. Okay. N.K. Jemisin openly credits early incomplete drafts with shaping the vision and strength of the Broken Earth trilogy, and it worked. She is the first author to win 3 consecutive Hugo Awards. Incredible. Of course, we just talked about Stephen King. Pros do it. There's no reason why you should not do it. Rewriting, cutting, and starting over is part of the process. All right, the next thing I have to tell you is to revisit periodically. I think I forgot the word work. My bad. Okay, revisit your work periodically. Every 6 months or so, sometimes earlier, sometimes later, I open up my slush piles for this year because I do have them organized by year. And I reread it, sometimes with a glass of wine. So I reread it, and I'm not fixing them. I'm just looking. I'm mining the information for things that I might find useful, things that maybe my muse has decided to cooperate. And if there's a half done book in there, I might actually be able to finish it. I'm always surprised. I spot so many nuggets of wisdom, details that I might want to reuse. Definitely find lines that are better than I remembered, and I frequently mine my slush pile for dialogue. It is technically, it's proof of how my writing has developed over time, almost like a time capsule. But revisit it. Don't just send it to the slush pile and then never look at it again. Revisit it regularly so that you are able to better understand where you've been, and you're able to use this for something useful later. So finally, I want to close with this. Words that didn't make it into the final draft still moved you forward. They stretched your voice, they revealed new skills, they sharpened your instincts, they helped develop your characters. So by cutting it, you are not starting over, you are building layer by layer, because there's no such thing as wasted words. Every sentence mattered, every page got you closer to the writer and the project that you were aiming for. So keep going. Right? I'm not going to call anything that moved you forward in your writing journey a waste. Keep going, even if it's messy, even if it makes you so frustrated. Just keep going. All right. Well, that concludes this little pep talk. I hope that you have a fantastic week ahead. Do not forget to stop in to AutoCrit for our various sprints this week so that you can keep editing or keep writing and find your community. Bye, everyone.